At 6 a.m. my daughter-in-law pounded on my door demanding the house. She had no idea what I'd already signed. At 6 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of fists pounding on my front door. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of pounding that rattles picture frames on the wall. I am 68 years old. My name is Margaret. And on that morning, standing behind my own curtains, I watched my daughter-in-law scream my name on my porch, while my son pulled into the driveway carrying a sledgehammer from the trunk of his car. They thought they were here to take my house. They had no idea that 3 days earlier, I had already given it away. My name is Margaret Coleman. I raised my son, Daniel, alone after his father passed when Daniel was 9. I worked double shifts at a hospital laundry facility for 11 years to keep this house the same house I was standing in that morning. Every wall, every floorboard, every crack in the ceiling, I paid for with my own hands. Daniel grew up, went to college on a scholarship I helped him apply for, and eventually married a woman named Vanessa. I welcomed her into our family the way I welcome everyone, with home-cooked dinners, with patience, with the assumption that she loved my son and, by extension, would come to love me. I was wrong about that second part. It started small. Vanessa would comment on how outdated my house looked. She'd mention, almost casually, how much the property was worth now that the neighborhood had developed. She'd ask questions that seemed harmless at first. Have you thought about your will, Margaret? But always landed a little too precisely on the topic of what happens to this house when I'm gone. 2 years ago, Daniel lost his job. Vanessa stopped working when their second child was born. Bills piled up. And slowly, the questions about my will turned into suggestions. The suggestions turned into arguments. The arguments turned into silence weeks where neither of them called, followed by sudden visits where Vanessa would walk through my home measuring rooms with her eyes, like a buyer inspecting a property before closing. 6 months ago, Daniel sat across from me at my kitchen table and said the words I never thought my son would say to my face. Mom, you're getting older. You can't keep up with this house alone. Why don't you let us take over the deed? We'll take care of you, you won't have to worry about taxes or repairs. It just makes sense. It didn't make sense. It made me feel like a problem to be solved, not a mother to be cared for. I told him I needed time to think. He told me I was being stubborn. Vanessa, sitting beside him, said something I will never forget. It's not really fair to the grandkids if you just sit on an asset like this. An asset. That's what my home, the home where I rocked Daniel to sleep, where I nursed him through chickenpox, where I sat alone after his father's funeral and decided I would not fall apart, had become to her. An asset. That night, I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew would help me without an agenda, my late husband's brother, Walter, who had spent 30 years as an estate attorney before retiring. Walter came to see me the following week. I told him everything: the comments, the pressure, the way Daniel's voice had changed when he talked about the deed. Walter listened without interrupting, the way good lawyers do, and when I finished, he asked me one question. Margaret, what do you actually want to happen to this house? I didn't want to give it to Daniel and Vanessa outright, not because I didn't love my son, but because I knew, with the certainty only a mother can have, that the moment the deed changed hands, Vanessa would either sell the house and move them somewhere bigger, or worse, move me into the smallest room in it and treat my presence as a burden they were generously tolerating. So Walter and I built something different. We set up a living trust. The house would remain fully protected, in my name, with explicit legal language preventing any forced sale or transfer without my written, notarized consent that could only be given by me, in person, in front of a licensed notary, with no family members present during the signing. But there was one more piece. Walter discovered something during the paperwork process that I hadn't expected. 8 weeks earlier, someone had attempted to file a power of attorney request using my name and date of birth through an online portal, using information that only a close family member would know. The request had been flagged and rejected by the county clerk's office for a mismatched signature, but the attempt was on record. Walter looked at me very seriously. "Margaret, someone tried to do this without your knowledge." I knew immediately who it had to be. I didn't confront Daniel right away. Instead, Walter helped me do something smarter. We finalized the trust, added a clause that would automatically alert legal authorities if anyone attempted unauthorized access to my property records again, and we waited. We didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the trust was finalized, Vanessa showed up at 6 in the morning, pounding on my door, screaming that I needed to stop being difficult and sign papers. Her lawyer had prepared papers that would have transferred my home into a joint ownership arrangement with her and Daniel listed as primary decision makers. I stood behind the curtain in silence as she screamed my name. I watched Daniel pull into the driveway minutes later. I watched him open his trunk and pull out a sledgehammer. My own son. Standing in my driveway. With a sledgehammer. He didn't swing it. I want to be clear about that. He never hit the door. But he held it like a threat, like a warning of what would happen if I didn't open up and be reasonable. His voice cracked when he shouted, "Mom, I'm getting in there one way or another." I unlocked the door myself. I wasn't afraid. I had already done everything I needed to do. I let them in. I sat them down at the same kitchen table where Daniel had once told me I was too old to manage my own life. Vanessa slid a folder across the table, papers prepared by a lawyer she'd hired without telling me, granting them authority over my finances and my home. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I slid my own folder across the table. Inside was a copy of the trust documents Walter and I had filed. A letter from the county clerk's office documenting the rejected unauthorized power of attorney filing from 8 weeks earlier, the one made using my personal information without my consent. And a formal notice, prepared by Walter, outlining the legal consequences of attempting to coerce a homeowner into signing away property rights, including the criminal statute covering elder financial exploitation in our state. Vanessa's face went pale. Daniel set the sledgehammer down on my porch and sat in my kitchen like a child who had been caught, because that's exactly what he was. "Mom, I didn't," he started. "You didn't think I would find out," I said quietly. "That's different from didn't do it." I told them both, calmly, that the house was protected. That no signature, no pressure, no early morning visit would ever change that. And then I told them something that surprised even me as I said it out loud. "I'm not angry that you need help, Daniel. I'm devastated that you tried to take it instead of asking for it. Because here is the truth," I had decided, sitting alone with Walter weeks earlier, I was never planning to leave my son with nothing. I had already arranged, through the trust, for a portion of my estate to support my grandchildren's education directly, money that couldn't be touched by anyone but them, when they came of age, for school and only school. I had set aside funds to help Daniel get back on his feet, administered by Walter, not handed over in one lump sum that Vanessa could control. I wasn't punishing my family. I was protecting it from the part of itself that had let greed take the driver's seat. Vanessa never apologized that day. She left without a word, the folder of papers still sitting untouched on my table. Daniel stayed behind for a long while after she'd gone. He didn't defend himself. He just sat across from me, the way he used to sit across from me as a boy after he'd done something he knew was wrong, waiting to see if I would still love him. I told him I did. I told him I always would. But I also told him that love doesn't mean I would hand over everything I built just because someone decided I was old enough to stop fighting for it. It's been 4 months now. Daniel started seeing a financial counselor through a program Walter recommended. He calls me every Sunday not to ask about the house, but just to talk, the way he used to before all of this began. Vanessa and I haven't spoken much, but Daniel tells me she's in counseling too, working through what he gently called the pressure she put on herself about money. My grandchildren still come over on weekends. We bake together in the same kitchen where their father once threatened, without meaning to, the only home I've ever truly owned. The sledgehammer is gone from Daniel's car. He told me he got rid of it the week after that morning. He said he couldn't look at it without feeling sick. I still live in this house. Every wall, every floorboard, every crack in the ceiling still mine, still protected, still standing exactly the way I built it. And every morning, when I wake up at 6, I think about how close I came to losing it all, not to a bank, not to a stranger, but to the people who were supposed to protect me most. I didn't let that happen. And if there's one thing I want anyone watching this to understand, it's this: protecting what you've built isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the only way to teach the people you love that love and entitlement are an